Time for weekly whiskey. Time for Czechoslovakian crystal. Time for us to take implicit bias in 2025 all the way back to 1991. I'm your host, Kevon Bordelon. This is Implicit Bias, our second episode in 2025. And why 1991? Because it was in 1991 that those famous words were uttered. Can't we all just get along? Seems like in the beginning of 2025, we need to hear that again. Sounds like in the beginning of 2025, maybe we just need to try and actually live those words. Because in the beginning of 2025, man, things just aren't right. There are certain times when, as we say on this show, we're all trying to be Christian, we're trying to be Catholic. It's more difficult in some times than others. Why is that, you ask? Well, it's that because we, you, me, even the people that don't listen to this show, we're a messy species. We're human beings. And human beings, while we have the ability to love, to laugh, to do so many great things, to create, we also have the ability to do the unthinkable. And as a matter of fact, all too often, we do the unthinkable, we do the bad stuff more than we do the good stuff. Well, at the beginning of 2025, it seems like there's an awful lot of bad stuff going on. Now, why does that make it hard to be Catholic or Christian in any way, shape, or form? Because, as we say on this show, we do our best to will the good of other for the sake of other. So as Christians, as Catholics, we should believe that it is from natural birth until natural death. But in the beginning of 2025, sometimes you may start to question whether some of us actually deserve to still be here. What I mean by that is this, is that there are lots of really good people out there. And then there are those who believe they need to involve people who have nothing to do with their cause, who have nothing to do with their philosophy, true innocent bystanders. And there are people who hurt those people, whether it's to make a point, whether it's for any reason. At some point, we look at those people and go, do you really deserve to be with the rest of us? Should you be with the rest of us? And as Catholics, as Christians, we're supposed to say, yes, you are to be here till natural death. Now, it doesn't mean that you shouldn't be in a prison somewhere, but in the United States of America, our system is designed that you are innocent until proven guilty, which means you actually have to commit the crime before you can be punished for it. That is both a good and at times a bad thing. And we have seen plenty of bad things in the beginning of 2025. Innocent people killed while simply trying to have fun. People blowing up trucks in front of hotels for heaven knows what reason, because we still don't know who did it. Well, this is what makes it difficult for us here on this show this week. Because we don't want to see anybody hurt. We don't care what you believe. We don't care what your philosophy is, what your religion is. We will the good of other for the sake of other. And there's really only one philosophy that adheres to that in every way, shape, or form. And it's what we are on this show. It is the Catholic Christian roots that we go to every single week. So what we can espouse in this rather short opening to this show that starts heavy, because we are trying to solve the problems of the world, and we're doing it maybe the way that everybody should be doing it. Sit down, talk it out, have a fun conversation, disagree, and when it's over, leave everybody else alone. Let them go live their lives just as you want them to let you live yours. So when you think about hurting someone else, just don't. When you think that to prove a point, other people have to die for your point to be made, you're wrong. When you think that your implicit bias is entitled to take the lives of others, guess what? You're incorrect. You're morally repugnant. And you are not part of the implicit bias of this show. So for those of you who are, for those of you who want to will the good of other for the sake of other, grab your weekly whiskey. We got a great crew for you here in the Mr. Lester's TSPL this week. We've got great whiskeys. We've got great stuff available that we're going to review. We are going to do this the right way. We're going to have a conversation. We're going to disagree. We're going to agree to disagree. We'll solve those same problems of the world, and we'll do it all with the civility that is needed for your implicit bias. We'll be right back. 1792 full proof on this week's episode of Implicit Bias. And yes, 2025 needs something so far that's about 125 proof. I'm your host, Kevon Bordelon. This is Implicit Bias from the Mr. Lester's top secret podcast lair. That is the TSPL for the uninitiated. Let me introduce you to the crew that we've got here this week. Sitting in the chair, much like mine, he is partaking of his weekly whiskey already. He is the rustic renegade, Caleb Morse. Caleb, great to have you in.
Great to be here. Great to be 6 foot up, and happy to be having a whiskey tonight.
I was about to say, you're just happy that you've got a whiskey, as every week, correct?
Most definitely.
Yeah. At the bar, we have Brian Hold Harmless Harmon, who is sitting in front of Deep Blue. Yeah, that is Brian on your left. And to the right, for his first appearance in the bar that it now is the TSPL, he is Burley Short Pour Pellerant. Great to have you back, Burley.
I'm
and
knocking stuff over even as we go. You didn't tell
Burley,
me that wasn't connected.
If you just broke that one, because Caleb broke one before
I didn't
the
break
show.
It literally just slid off the
no,
end
like
of it.
if it split because it fell, you're killing me.
Well, I'm sorry. I'm grateful and glad to be here. It's been a long time. Been way too long.
It has been way
Happy
too
to be
long.
back.
It has been. Brian, how are you while Burley attempts to go down there and fix that?
I'm doing fine. Thank y'all for having me again. I'm looking forward to
Watch his hands,
a new
watch his
year.
hands.
Yeah, see,
And,
this almost worked. I wanted to see Burley try and go get that on camera while y'all were both sitting there. I tried.
Good job.
I tried. We'll fix that before the next segment. Let's dive in.
Need some Velcro or something.
Let's dive in to our weekly whiskey, which is not unobtainium anymore. These are easier to find now. Full proof 1792, which always comes in at 125 proof. Let's start at the bar. Who wants to go first? Burley, you're going to chime in first. What do you think of this particular Kentucky Straight Bourbon whiskey?
I think of this exactly what I remember of it. This is a sleeper.
Okay.
This is a sleeper whiskey.
Sleeper might not be the right term that you want to use right now. I'm just saying.
Oh.
It doesn't get the credit that it deserves. I'll
That
tell you
works.
that.
There we go.
How's
We
that?
can go with that one.
And the reason why is, first of all, it's a high rye whiskey, high rye bourbon, and so that's right in my space where I like high proof, and it's oily. It's got a great feel on the palate. This is I forgot about this one, but I remember why I like this one.
I am with you on the fact that this one is oily. It is viscous, but it does have that just oily feel on the palate that really gives it a long finish. And I've always loved what they've done with the full proof 1792. This bottle certainly does not disappoint. It's been a few years since we've done one here on the show, and I always like to check in and see kind of what the new releases look like, if they still live up to the old. I think this one does.
It really does. It's when you do the push your tongue to the roof of your mouth thing, you get that good burn. That's where you pick up that rye. And it's a great whiskey. I think it's a great whiskey.
Outstanding. Mr. Harmon, what do you think of this particular offering?
I agree. I think it's an easy drink for the high proof. Y'all won me over when I started interacting with you guys. I was always
I love the way he puts that. Interacting.
I chose
Go ahead
my
and
words.
call it what it is. Call it what it is. Goofing off, drinking, sitting around sipping, slumming. Yeah, there's a bunch of words you can use.
Good, easy to drink for the high proof. I can't say anything more than what he just said. You mentioned the long finish too. I agree. It's got a good aftertaste, and I'm curious to see what this one costs.
Okay, yeah, we'll talk about that in a few minutes. All right, Mr. Morse.
I'm surprised that Brian wasn't more loquacious with that. You normally speak a little bit more. Like, you really just want a second Burley?
Well, I'm watching the show more and more with my old lady, and I'm just tired of being ridiculed for the things I say.
So,
I'm just
whoa,
gonna
whoa,
start-
whoa, whoa, whoa,
Well, that's
whoa,
what
hold
happens
on,
every
hold
day
on.
in a marriage.
Hold on.
anyway.
That's the
Hold-
story of
That's
my
me checking the
appearance.
box.
Hold
I
on.
said I would mention her. I
Hold
mentioned
on, hold on. As the guy in the video would say, hold up, wait a minute. You got make fun of because of what you say, but you just called your wife your old lady on the show, and you watch it with her.
He
You're a
said
brave man.
It was old lady. He didn't
lady.
pronounce the D.
That- there
Oh,
you go.
okay.
That's right.
So that makes
Yeah.
a difference.
Yeah.
It does.
That makes a difference. Do you sleep, Brian? Because I'm
No.
suggesting you don't for a couple of weeks. That's all I'm gonna say.
With one eye open.
Yeah.
I like the game you married guys are playing like y'all don't know what I'm talking about.
I call my wife a ton of things.
No,
I was about to say, I've never called my wife my old lady,
I don't
and
think I've
she's in
called
the
her
other
that.
room, and she knows that.
That's a term of endearment.
And-
That's not.
It is.
Oh,
it is.
okay.
Yeah.
I don't think
Okay.
I've called
And
my
I'm
wife
looking
that,
through
though.
the door, and I see she has her shoe in hand just in case, because she's got a direct line of sight to where Kavan
Yeah.
is.
All right, so Caleb, what do you think of this 1792?
So I got notes, not copious, but I got notes on the nose. I get banana Foster. I get that banana, that caramel. It's robust. It's there. And then I had to Google baking spices to figure out which spice I smelled, and I narrowed it down to cardamom. I'm sorry, no, not cardamom. Coriander.
Coriander. Okay.
Coriander. Narrowed it down to coriander. I was like, oh, that's it. Nutty, a little bit of sweet. Yep, that's there on the nose. And then on the flavor, it's nutty, earthy, smoked, but not overly smoked. And then, Walker, you good? You all right?
Well, we're gonna go to Walker in a
Yeah.
minute, even though we can't see him.
It's because I said nutty twice.
Yeah.
And then smoked candied plantains.
Smoked
Yep.
candied.
You ever had
Plantains.
candied plantains? Normally
I
they'll take
have.
them, they'll roast them, bring them out, a little cinnamon, like a miniature banana Foster. But if they were smoked over like pecan wood or something first, because they've got a little bit of acidic flavor to it, but it hits right. It's a great little dessert, and this at 125 proof, buy it.
So not just any wood, only pecan wood.
Yeah, because mesquite would be too acidic,
Okay.
right? Apple would be too sweet. Pecan gives it just that hint of acidic flavor you're looking for, but it still doesn't override the sweetness of the cinnamon, the caramel, and the plantain.
Couldn't have been maple.
No.
Okay. So smoked over pecan wood. And
Yep.
I do get that little bit of smoke on this. I love the sweet. To me, this is bourbony McBourbon.
Oh, yeah.
I get heavy creme brulee off of this. Almost that burnt sugar, custardy, smooth on the palate, just
I can see that.
substantial
Mhm.
on the palate as well, which gives it that little bit of oil that you expect. What do you want to chime in,
But
Burley?
not overly sweet,
No.
because I'm not a sweets, but I do get what you're
Burley,
saying.
we know you're sweet. That's a whole nother story.
Yeah, we're not doing a
Ring the bell.
diabetes commercial after this.
Ring,
one,
ring the
It's-
bell.
it's-
That was funny.
It's sweet enough. It's good. It's hint there, but it's not
Less-
fleeting either.
Less is more. So
Yeah.
Yes.
yeah.
It's the hint of sweet
Yes.
with this. It's not over sweet. And I do agree with you there. I absolutely love this one as well. And at 125 proof, this is one of those that hits what we like to do, just kind of right in the feels. It has everything we like. It's got a little bit of aggression to it. It's got a right proof on it. It's got that caramel flavor. It's bourbony McBourbon. So I'm in love with this. I'm curious to hear what the implicit bias intern, who no longer wears his pledge pin, has to say.
A pledge pin.
Yeah, a pledge pin.
I enjoy this one. I do get like the spice on it or like little after. But Caleb mentioned he liked the nutty wood flavor of it. So that
Is
kind
that what
of
got you?
yeah, it kind of threw me
Yeah.
off guard a little bit. But
So apparently you like nutty wood too, right?
well, I
You
guess
just
so.
I went one way and you went another way. That's what it was. I said one thing and something else went in your mind. That's what happened.
Yeah.
Oh God, I can't say this on terrestrial
He's in the
radio.
gutter.
I
He's
want
in
to
the
say this
gutter.
on terrestrial radio and I just can't. Anyway,
You can beep it out.
so Walker, what do you think of this? Where would you rate this on the Morse Whiskey rating code? Would this be a red? Wouldn't drink it even if it was free. A yellow? Only if it was free. A green, you would seek it out, or a blue? A green, you would buy it, or a blue, you would seek this out.
I'm gonna say definite blue.
Okay, this is a blue for you. Interesting. And let's go ahead and get your offering on what would you pay for this. So what would you pay for this bottle of Full Proof 1792?
85.
85 and a blue. All right, let's go to the bar. Brian, we'll start with you. Where do you rate this and what would you pay?
I'm going to give it a green. I'm going to hold off on the blue designation, but I would say it's a $65 bottle.
Okay, so green and $65. Burley?
I'll go with a blue just because this is just a great sipper. This is not, by the way, this is not something you want to mix with anything. There's too many flavors, I think. So if you're gonna have a mixed drink, I don't think you want to mess with this one.
You sure?
I mean,
You
that's a
sure
pretty-
about that?
I don't think
That's
so.
a pretty good call. 'cause
I don't think this would make even a good old fashioned.
No, it
Oh,
makes
I
a
don't
great
know.
old fashioned. But
I don't
I
know.
think for the typical mixer, when they're looking like they'll mix it with Coke or Dr. Pepper or
Well,
something
maybe
else,
so.
you couldn't do that
Again,
with
I'm
this.
not even an old fashioned guy.
Yeah,
but
I agree with you.
there's-
Can't mix it. You
I
can't.
think there's too many good flavors for this not to be enjoyed by itself. Maybe on an ice sphere, but that's it. I wouldn't mix it.
We're going to disagree on this because an old fashioned out of this, to me, would be off the charts. It's got enough
It is.
proof.
It is.
It's going to stand up on its own. The flavors in the old fashioned are going to add to a lot of it because you're going to get a little of that brown
putting
sugar, a
all
little bit of that
stuff in
vanilla.
there. I don't know.
It's going to make a killer old fashioned.
Maybe
You're-
so.
You're not.
If you're an old fashioned guy, I'm not.
I'm going to give you one that you probably wouldn't think of when making this because traditionally it's not made with a bourbon. You make a Sazerac out of this, off the charts.
Really.
Well, think about it. It's 2.5 to 3 ounces of whiskey, bitters, some herb saint in the glass, finish with a lemon peel. That's what it would make. And you've got to have some simple syrup in there. It sweetens it a little bit, but you don't need a ton of the simple syrup because you've got a little sweet in the whiskey.
Right.
This, to me, in an old fashioned would be great. In a Sazerac would be off the charts. And it's enough sweet here that you can pull back,
Pull back on the sugar.
on the simple syrup.
Yeah. Okay.
And you still have enough spice to make a Sazerac out of it. That's what I'm thinking here. And I'm not traditionally one, to say let's put really good stuff
Right.
into a cocktail. This might work. All right,
All right.
Caleb.
Well,
Wait,
I didn't
finish.
Oh, okay. I'm
I
sorry.
will give it a blue.
Okay.
I'll give it a blue. I'll go $60.
$60. All right.
I want to give it a blue. And the only reason I'm not going to is because I forget about it. This is one of those bottles that when I go down to New News and look at everything else, I'm like, ooh, I always love that. Oh, piece of candy. It's like something else catches my attention because I forget about it, right? So it's phenomenal. This stuff drinks really well. I know about where it costs. It's a bargain, a phenomenal bargain. And I'm only not going to give it a blue because I've overlooked it on accident. So, a blue is one of those where I'm like, you know what? I have to have that.
But did you overlook it on accident or did you overlook it because it's not unobtainium? Did you
That might be
overlook it
it.
because it's on the shelf pretty consistently now?
And
It used to not
yeah.
be, but now it is.
It needs to be on the bar. It
Yeah.
deserves a place on your bar. I think. And for that reason, I would give it a blue.
give it a blue.
I think it needs to
And
be on
maybe
the
that's my problem is I look at it, I'm like, ooh, I've had that. I like that. Let me try something different. Where this should be, I have that, or I had that, I ran out of that. Let me buy another bottle. That's what this should be. Y'all are trying to change my mind. I'm gonna stick with it green.
Okay, so deciding vote because we have two blues,
I didn't give
two
you a
greens.
price.
I don't care. No, what's your price?
Yeah, this is gonna sound really bad, but I'm gonna go $56.99.
$56.99. All right. This is a blue. This is a blue. I've always got to have one on my bar at 125 proof. Man, it's just so good. It is such the example of bourbon, and bourbon at a high proof that is easily drinkable,
That's-
easily enjoyable.
That's the thing. 125 proof. Everybody can't drink. But at this,
You can
have it on your
anyone
bar.
drink
You
this.
can
Oh,
you
yeah.
can introduce somebody to this whiskey.
And pretty much this 125, anybody can drink. It's not that bad when you think about
Well, you can
proof and how it
always-
expresses on the palate.
You can always say it's something different. Put it in your decanter, put an empty bottle of something that you bought 6 years ago that you can't find again next to it, and be like, oh, we're drinking this, because it masks it really well.
No one would know.
No,
It is that good.
They're never gonna know.
So, so it's a blue. So that's a 3-2 split decision blue. That means that some of that has to find its way into deep blue on the bar, the Implicit Bias Infinity bottle, which, by the way, William S. Nacall Jewelers, you can get them there. That's where they have the Waterford lead-free crystal that we use for our Infinity bottle. Now, as far as the what would you pay championship belt chain presented by Box Drop of Lafayette.
That's
Caleb
the sound it makes
Morse.
when you hold it.
Caleb Morse is the winner because this is about a $54 to $55 bottle of whiskey, which is another reason why this is an absolute blue. Just the affordability of it at this price point,
Oh yeah.
at this proof, it can't be matched, in my opinion. It's one of those that I don't want to say should be unobtainium, but isn't. Because I don't want to create a market where there isn't one, a secondary market where there isn't one. But this is one that I am shocked people aren't still fighting over.
Well,
Because at one time they were.
I think a lot of it's just because it gets forgotten. It gets overlooked. I mean, it's a nice presentation, but it doesn't stand out. You know, it kind of gets lost on the shelf. So when you go there, you're like, well, let me look for a bottle. Ooh, look how tall that bottle is. You're not looking for this little short bottle with hips.
Did it go through a period where there was some inconsistency?
Not that I recall.
Not that I've tasted.
It
It
did go through a period. So you're thinking
well,
Willet.
Pot
Yep.
still.
Pot still
Yeah.
had some inconsistency. This, as far as I know, did not have any inconsistency with the liquid in the bottle. Availability was an issue for a while. And then once the availability started to catch up, once the supply started to catch up,
The interest waned.
kind of.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, and I hate to say this about bourbon drinkers because I think we're this way.
Trendy.
Not only are we trendy, if we can't find it, we're like, oh, it must be special.
Hmm.
No. Sometimes if you can't find it, it's because it's either going to other states, it's being distributed differently, or there's just a hiccup. It could even be like we know with some of our,
maybe
it could
a
be a bottle.
fire.
It could be a fire. It could be a bottle issue. There's all
Oh, I
kinds of
forgot about
reasons
that, yeah.
why we might have some inconsistency in supply. And once it starts being seen on shelves all the time, now people are like, well, it must not be that special anymore. Therein lies part of the problem. But this one is absolutely special. Full proof, 1792. I love it almost as much as I love telling the guy in the corner who I don't even remember his name because I don't care. When he gives me the 1 minute finger, Walker, when he gives me the 1 minute finger to hold off because we're going to go a bit long. We're not going that long, Walker. This to me, an absolute blue, an absolute everyday drinker that you have to have on the bar. And this is what will continue on with our implicit bias as we get into the stories of this week when we come back. Implicit bias rolls on, and trust me, you do not hate the legacy media enough. Or maybe you do. I'm your host, Kevon Bordelon. Welcome into the Mr. Lester's TSPL as implicit bias rolls on here in January of 2025. Let me introduce you to the crew we've got here. Say hi, Walker, because we can't see you.
Hello.
You're supposed to say hi, Walker. Oh, God, he just does.
Hi, Walker.
Oh, yeah, there we
He's
go.
not awake. He's less here than I am.
Which isn't saying much. That's the voice of Caleb Morse, the Rustic Renegade. And, of course, at the bar, we've got Hold Harmless Harmon from Dupree Carrier Godshaw and Short Poor Burley Pellaram making a repeat appearance here in the TSPL. Great to have y'all back in. And I sent the article out, and this is one that I actually do not agree with. I sent the article out that says you do not hate the legacy media enough. Now, the question is why? Well, this article, and it's just one of those pictures that you get off of social media, and all it shows are all of the different headlines from Vegas that say Cybertruck has explosion, Cybertruck explosion. It's basically all the headlines that lead you to believe that it might have been a Cybertruck fire in front of the Trump Hotel, that leads you to believe it might have been an accident, when within seconds, everyone had video of this truck blowing up on the internet, and it clearly was not an electric automobile fire. Clearly was not. So I'm curious, first of all, here in the TSPL, What are your thoughts on those headlines before I tell you why I actually like them?
Predictable.
What do you mean predictable, Brian? And you
Well-
can move the microphone. You don't have to like lean over like, you've got scoliosis
You could
or
just sit in
something.
his lap.
How long have we been talking about the same subject? Like, that's what I mean by predictable. I saw, was it the Washington Post? A truck drove down, hit bystanders on Bourbon Street. That was the headline on the Washington. I hope it's either Washington Times or the Washington Post.
It's probably the Post.
Yeah, forgive me. Bezos's
Yeah,
paper.
that's the Post.
Okay, all right. It's just more of the same. We see it time and time again. It's not the first time that headlines have been misleading. It's not the first time that the whole country has become we've awoken to the problem of our media. So just how you started it, you can't hate the media enough. And when you asked why, I almost turned to the microphone and said, "How much time do you have?"
They have conditioned us a certain way, no doubt. Pellerin?
Well, the fact that we didn't hear about it being a Ford F-150 in New Orleans as a part of the headline,
Right.
but yet we heard that as the first word in
Cybertruck.
in the Tesla. Actually, Tesla Cybertruck explodes in front of Trump Hotel.
Yeah.
Right. That's the problem, because they're looking for those things to tie it to the things that they have been against for years now. And so anything to do with Tesla, SpaceX,
Yeah, because they are mad at Elon now for buying Twitter and letting people actually
absolutely.
speak.
and then, of course, Trump. So it ties negativity to an event that should have been news, given the recent news in New Orleans. So when they do that, that's what gives the bad taste in the mouth about the legacy media.
Okay. I can see that. Caleb?
It should have been vehicle explodes in front of hotel.
Yeah, if they were going to be vague, they should have been vague,
Right.
And not where they have the
Exactly.
the incidental specificity. I can't say the word.
Specificity.
Yeah, that word.
Specificity.
So walk
Hooked on phonics, work for me.
Record-
Specificity.
record when he says spec
Spec.
yeah
Fi.
fair
Si.
say
T.
specificity. Record when he says that, and when I want to say it, I'll just point at you. So like they were being specific when they didn't need to be. They were trying to be vague and everything else. Which
Agreed.
look, I get why they didn't have all the facts maybe right away. Or maybe they were like, look, we don't want to make people think these might be connected, Vegas and New Orleans. My preferred headline would have been vehicle explosion in Las Vegas. Can it be connected? Is this how 2025 starts? Something like that. Because there are very few coincidences, right? I think that there's got to be something connecting these two besides where they served, that kind of stuff. And I think they were specific when they didn't need to be. And what in New Orleans, wasn't it a Ford Lightning?
It was.
It was, yeah. So
It was a Ford Lightning.
Well, it is a 150.
It's an F-150 Lightning,
Yeah.
but specifically an electric vehicle.
I wouldn't even call it
Yeah.
F-150. I think it
I
can't
hadn't even
tow
heard
what it
that.
can tow.
Okay, so
But I think this goes to show that, look, no matter how many fireworks you ram into a Tesla Cybertruck, they're still not cool.
here's why I liked the headlines. Change does not happen like a light switch. And I truly believe that some of the vagueness of the headlines that we have seen over those two incidents specifically, which, by the way, we're staying away from a lot of the details on those. And we talked about just don't in the monologue, don't hurt other people. We stayed away from it because of when we're recording this episode versus when it will air. And we know that there's going to be a lot of things that come out between the recording of this episode and the day that it airs and goes public. So we're holding off on some of that, which is what I hope the legacy media is doing. We don't have all the info, so we have to be vague about some things. Now, to your point, Burley, old habits die hard, which means, oh, wait, We can tie this to
Here's our
Elon. We can
chance.
tie this to, yes, we can tie this to Tesla. We can put the word Cybertruck on it and maybe make this
And you
look
know-
like people can connect the dots. If we're looking at connecting the dots, Caleb, I'm with you. To me, the headline should read something to the effect of vehicle explosion, mass casualty event in 2 different cities on same day. That's all you got to do. You do that and people are going to read.
Oh yeah, I mean, and like when it first happened, when I saw it, and or read the headlines, I was like, oh, I wonder if it got water in the battery. Like that's what I thought, because that's what the media have you believe, is that these Teslas are just exploding left and right. And then I looked into it, I'm like, well, they're not really exploding that often. So, I mean, there's a spin. It's not huge, but it's there.
What I do love,
I love you too.
I didn't say I loved you. Don't flatter yourself. I can do better than you. What I did love about this situation was this. It has been said, we've said it here on this show, where is media going? Media is going to citizen journalism. And within moments of the events that we've had at the beginning of 2025, we had plenty of citizens being journalists. We had plenty of citizens putting information and video and actual eyewitness out there. That's a big deal. That's why, Burley, these old habits are so hard to die, because they know that they are going to retain some listenership, some viewership, some readership if they continue to trash people, because they're going to keep those people who are brainwashed and won't ask questions. Right. That's their influence over the few people who still believe them with those headlines.
Well, there are a lot of people that are out there that still want to put their head in the dirt, right, in the sand, and they want to be told what to do, told how to think, because ignorance is bliss. And once you know the truth, you can't go back to being ignorant.
Once you see the Matrix, there is no going back. And I mean that metaphorically, because the reality is, once you see how media operates and you understand it, you can't unsee that. You can't go back and be blissfully ignorant. Now, every single time something happens, it stares you in the face. You can almost, to go back to what Brian said, when something happens, you can almost predict what the headlines are going to be. Why? Because, well, old habits die hard.
Because they want to tell you a story and not the story.
Please don't believe us on this. Please go look up what headlines ran immediately after what happened in New Orleans, immediately after what happened with the truck in Vegas. Just go look it up.
The interesting thing, though, in today's world, again, and we've said this many times, is that everyone's got a camera, which also has a microphone, right? 20 some odd years ago, when there was a fire or an explosion or a car crash, you would have to wait for TV 10, the van to show up with the guy and the reporter.
Correct.
We don't have to do that anymore. We don't have to do that anymore. And there are platforms now that thankfully have changed for the better. Let's agree to that. Have changed for the better, so that whether it's right, it's hard to dispute eyewitness account in real time.
Well, to your point, Burley, it used to be when there was an accident, you had to wait for whatever TV station to get there to show you the aftermath.
Yeah, now you
Today,
can see it real time.
you're seeing the accident.
Exactly.
And the benefit to that is we get more information fast. The downfall to that is people would rather record than intervene. I mean, look at the woman that was set on fire in the subway.
I get
An
that.
individual stood there and was like, let me get this on, I'm going to put it on my ex, right? Instead of saying, holy crap, let me go put this fire out.
Yeah.
And not just that one individual with the camera, the other 4 or 5 dozen people that were in the vicinity, no one did anything.
It's funny, though, because I have seen some reports where they're showing this eyewitness video, this amateur video, and the legacy media is still saying, we can't verify this. We're still going to tell you what we want to tell you, but we're going to show you this because it's eye catching, and they're still playing the game where they're going to tell you something different than what you're seeing sometimes. That's what blows my mind.
But there's another reason why they show the video. And do you know what it is? Plausible deniability.
It's not
that
theirs.
way. Well, not just that. That way they can say, well, we showed the video. Even though they might have told you a different story, they can say we showed the video. Essentially, the video becomes Sonny Holstein on The View.
Listen to what I'm saying, but don't pay attention to what I'm showing you unless you want to do the opposite.
Well, whatever her name is, Sonny Holstein Cows, I don't know, whatever. Whatever her name is on The View, the one who has been doing all of the legal disclaimers, that's what the video is. The video's a legal disclaimer, essentially. Because when someone goes to try and file suit, they can say, well, see, we showed the video. Which, once you put that in court, a court's going to look at it and say, well, you let the viewer make up their mind even though you wrote one thing and said something else or showed something else.
Yeah, you spun it, but, you told us.
Correct.
You showed us.
But you showed it to us, which means that, well, it's okay. You know what's not okay? What's not okay is watching Walker try to lean over and show me the finger from the corner. And I don't mean that finger. I mean the 1 minute finger, like we have to go to break. I want to watch him fall off the chair one day. We're going to have to rig the chair so the next time he leans.
You push the wheel.
I'll take a wheel out.
Yeah.
I'll take a wheel out from under the when he gets right over kilter, it'll
Yeah.
We're going to take a wheel out. We're going to come back, bring you the final segment of hour 1 of this week's episode of Implicit Bias. If you missed any of it so far, just go find us on our socials, X, YouTube, Facebook, Instagram. Subscribe wherever you get podcasts. Trust me, it's always more fun when you're catching the full Implicit Bias. One more segment in hour 1 of this week's episode of Implicit Bias. I'm Kevon Bordelon. Welcome into the Top Secret Podcast Lair presented by Mr. Lester Steakhouse, the only 5-star restaurant between New Orleans and Houston. Trust me, the TSPL is nice. Don't get me wrong. But Mr. Lester's is just a whole nother level. Let me introduce you to the crew that we've got here this week. He is the rustic renegade, Caleb Morse, sitting in the chair much like mine. At the bar, we've got short, poor Burley Pellerin and hold harmless Brian Harmon of Dupree Carrier Godshaw. And of course, in the corner, we don't show him to you because we like you, not him, Walker Griffon, the Implicit Bias Pledge. So, Caleb, that looked... Anyway.
Yeah.
So, last story for hour 1. We always like to have a little bit of fun with stories at the end of the hour. This is one that we actually touched on a little bit last week, but I really wanted to go a little more in depth this week.
Now I'm trying to think of things that I touched on a little bit that I wanted to go deeper in.
This article comes from the Daily Mail.
Oh, wait.
The CIA...
Jackie's ears just went up.
The CIA, apparently in leaked documents, claims to have used remote viewers to go back in time and visit Mars when Mars was inhabited.
And when you say remote viewers, we're talking astral projection.
Correct. We mean people who go into sensory deprivation, separate their psyche, their spirit, whatever you want to call it, from their physical bodies, and can then move interdimensionally, I guess, through time and space.
This is the first one I've heard about through time. But do you realize the rabbit hole you sent me down with this?
Well, okay, so let's start with, matter of fact, someone who passed away, God bless you, Walker.
Bless you.
Someone who passed away in 2023, Jimmy Carter.
Mhm.
Jimmy Carter admitted in a press...
Wait.
24.
Oh,
2024.
Go look at the headlines. That's a rabbit hole. Have fun. So
What?
that's a whole nother reference.
Son of a gun.
There was a reference to him allegedly passing in 2023.
Okay.
And
Okay.
after we saw what was allegedly Jimmy Carter show up to vote in 2024, I don't know that any of us, other than the people who were physically there, and I wasn't there, you weren't there, could physically say that was definitely Jimmy Carter. Because that poor person, they weren't able to move out of the bed, much less actually physically go vote.
Valid point.
And
Very
I
valid
feel
point.
bad for whoever that was, but that's a whole nother rabbit hole. So Jimmy Carter did in an interview, admit to the United States government using remote viewers to find a plane, I believe, in the Congo.
Yep.
He admitted this decades ago.
There have been multiple instances since then for psychics and astral projection for a number of things. They use them for missing persons. They use them for identifying and finding planes, for down planes. They've used them for finding remains of individuals that were lost during Vietnam. And then I started getting into it like, well, do I think this is real? And then I went back to the Old Testament, and I was like, okay, well, it's weird, and it's in the Old Testament too. So now I believe in astral projection.
Okay, so let's go to the bar first of all. Anything jump out at you about this story saying that there's life on Mars a very, very long time ago? We're talking, what, thousands of years ago?
It said like a million years
Yeah, it was like
ago.
a million years ago. That's the claim.
1 million years BC.
Yeah, Burley, you actually need to be against the microphone.
Sorry, I
Remember,
was
this is
just
an
kinda
audible
thinking out loud.
medium, just so you know.
1 million years BC is what it says. To Mars, a million years before Christ. That's what.
So we would be 1,002,025 years later, right?
Through the astral plane.
Through the astral plane. So first of all, that's the first question I have, which is, do you believe that we actually have the ability to reference, see, and can verify something that far back?
No.
I don't think
No.
we. I don't
No.
think we do.
Hogwash.
But like, maybe a spiritual being, but I don't think spiritual beings can travel through like time. God has that. God has that capability, but I don't think an angel. I don't think Gabriel would be like, you know what? I'm gonna go back this far.
Not for the purposes of reporting it
No.
back.
No,
I,
and
I'm
that's
ju- I,
yeah.
that's,
So being able to confirm it to me is the hard part. I mean,
can we do it? Do we travel? Do our spirits travel? Do I hope for
Well, I
the
mean,
afterlife?
you
Absolutely.
Feel,
I mean,
you
absolutely.
feel presences, right? Like if someone walks in the room and
Yes.
your spirit might engage theirs,
no
and
doubt.
you're like, heebie-jeebies.
No doubt. My dog, I know my dog does. We talk about it in my family all the time.
So wait, hold on. So whoa. So you talk to your dog, but you don't believe that we can go back and astrally
I
project
did not say I
remote
talk
view.
to my dog. I say I watch my dogs. I
every
watch
dog
my
owner
dog's
talks to their
behavior,
dog.
and we've determined that it's because he sees something or senses something that makes him walk backwards and take a different route. I'm just
Well,
saying.
it goes into,
I don't disagree.
We're spiritual beings in a physical body, right? So
Absolutely.
there are things
100%.
that our spirits are capable of that we may not be. And like in this instance, when you look at King Solomon went to and found a witch to talk to pull out, what was his name?
You got me
He
here.
was a prophet, and it actually talks in the Bible about witchcraft, where a witch pulls out a prophet from the Sheol, the place of the dead, and he came up and she's like, "Who are you that have called upon this spirit?" And they had communication because a demon was with her, right? So the Bible tells us this kind of stuff exists, but we don't talk about interdimensional or intertime travel. That's never been mentioned. And then here with this, we talk about going back 1 million years, which I don't think that happened.
That's where that's one of the spots where I kind of looked at this and said, nope, that's not far back enough. Okay. I didn't go down the full rabbit hole. I stopped myself, even though I was interested. The short answer is no. I don't believe. I don't think any of this, as far as being able to have someone be able to visit Mars. First of all, my biggest problem was the 1 million years y'all brought up. Yes, Mars had a very thick atmosphere. There was liquid water on Mars. Geological time is not 1 million years is not long enough to go back for Mars to have been a blue planet like what we find Earth today.
So wait, how do you know that?
I don't know that. People that are smarter than I have told me, have written articles about this.
So you trust the experts?
I trust the experts because in geological
You just
time,
keep walking yourself down that road.
in
Brian, I'm just
geological
saying.
time frame, 1 million years is not very long at all.
No, it's not.
Okay, and it's not long enough. I think 1 billion years ago, roughly, maybe 400, 500 million years ago is what I don't know if astrophysicists are the experts on Mars, but that's that's how far back you'd have to go before you would get a blue and green Mars.
So here's where I want to have some fun with this, and this is my question for you: is this 1 million Earth years or 1 million Martian years. Because a Martian year is
Oh.
significantly longer than an Earth year due to the distance of orbit around the sun.
That's a good point. Still not enough time.
Well, and maybe time is different. Maybe they count years differently than we do. And I need to correct myself. It was King Saul who called up Samuel, and it is in 1 Samuel 28. It's called the chapter is actually the Witch of Endor, where they talk about it in the Bible. It's a really interesting section of Bible if you want to go back and read and look into it, because it talks about witchcraft and astral projection.
Here, to me, is the really fun part about this story. Live Martians doesn't catch a blip on anybody's radar.
Oh,
Right?
No, yeah, no.
Aliens isn't a big deal in this story. Human beings, remote viewing, astral projection, and the CIA being involved,
Oh, imagine that.
shocker. Well, and that's so another one. And it's the little bits of truth in here that you're like, I wonder if the CIA has messed with astral projection and remote viewing. We know they have.
Well, I wonder if they just fed him a bunch of LSD or something beforehand. They were like, "What do you see?"
DMT.
It could have been. They could have microdosed him. Who knows? And that, or her, depending upon who this remote viewer was, and come back with these answers. But the fact that we're spending government dollars to do this, we're walking down this road and we say government dollars. I'm sure all of this is on the books, right? None of this is on the books. We have no
There's-
idea where this came from.
There's a little bit more on the books than I thought there would be. Like, that's what the rabbit hole I went down. I was like, holy crap. There are multiple government documents that say this happened, not just one or two. That's where I was like, hold the phone. What, how am I just now learning about this?
Yeah, that's the same. That's what I felt too. It's like, how have I not gone down this rabbit hole already?
Yeah.
But it's just a bridge too far for me. That's all.
MK Ultra was a thing.
Yep. 100%.
We know it was. We know that working with remote viewers in the Army was a thing. We know that working with telepaths was a thing. There were actually, and please again, don't believe us on this, I just find it fascinating that the Army was doing research around people who would bend spoons by simply holding them and using their mind to, by the way, when they would bend the spoons, it would actually change the molecular structure. Like if you bend metal, it's not changing the atomic structure of the metal. It bends it, it breaks it, it creates fissure in the metal, as opposed to looking like the metal was formed that way from the get-go. And that's what the Army was researching. And to me, the most fascinating part of that is the ones that were the most fantastic and the most elaborate were kids. It was kids because a child's brain had not been polluted like an adult's brain to be told, this can't happen. This can't be done. When we get conditioned to things like that, one of the things that they would do to train people to do this, the first thing they had to do was take whatever utensils they were going to use and throw them on the floor. Because if not, the human brain looked at it and said, that's a fork. It's not meant to do these things. A fork is used for this. That's a spoon. It's used for that. Once it was on the floor, it was trash. Much like somebody who would give me the 1 minute finger in the corner, aka Walker. So you had to not care about it, like we don't care about Walker, and then you could bend it and ply it and do what you will with it, much like you will do as we take this break. By the way, if you're only getting hour one of Implicit Bias, call your local radio station, let them know you want hour two. If you haven't got it, by the way, find us on YouTube, Facebook, Insta, follow, subscribe, like, wherever you get podcasts, and catch hour two of Implicit Bias, which is always more fun. Hour two, more fun, Implicit Bias. Me, Kavan Bordelon. Next, Caleb Mort. No, I'm kidding. This is Implicit Bias. Yes, we're not speaking caveman, Caleb. I see you trying not to laugh.
I was dying. 'Cause I'm like, oh, I speak this language.
This is Implicit Bias. This is hour two. That is Caleb Morse at the bar. Say hi, fellas.
Hi, fellas.
Yeah, there you go. See, Brian knows. Brian knows. And Burley, I'm disappointed because you should have known. You spent enough time around this
I
show.
didn't want to overtalk Brian.
Okay, that one y'all could have said in unison. You know this.
We'll do better next time.
Yeah, well, there won't be a next time because I'm not inviting you back. I'm kidding. That's Brian Hold Harmless Harmon. That is Short Poor Pellerin. The one you can't see is Walker Griffon. Say hi, Walker.
Hi, Walker. Oh.
Couldn't even turn on.
Hi, Walker.
Couldn't even turn on his microphone. That's the only job you have to is make sure that the system records and people's microphones are on. And you couldn't even turn on your own mic, Walker.
You over there watching TikTok? Is that what's
He
happening?
probably is.
No, I don't have TikTok.
Well, then what are you looking at?
Twitter.
Which has helped us here on the show because
Okay.
at times things have trended on Twitter
Thank you
that
to our
we need
newest
to talk
sponsor.
to. Yeah. Yeah. Elon, if you're watching, we'd love to have you on, by the way.
All about it. All-
Okay. New weekly whiskeys in hour 2. Let's start here. Multiple weekly whiskeys. These are the whiskeys available at Mr. Lester Steakhouse in the month of January. They are here in the Mr. Lester's TSPL, the top secret podcast lair for the uninitiated. The first is right here in my hands. It is Bluestone Manor. Caleb, you saw this one, and of course my eyes are going bad. 90 yep,
proof.
90 proof, 45% alcohol by volume. Let's make sure we got that right. Tug will tell me sooner or later. Burley, you said you thought this one was maybe just a little light after coming off of something at 125 proof.
Yeah, definitely. It's not a bad drink. It's just that's hard to drink after having something so vibrant and so interesting just before.
Okay, but the flavors on this one are
It is
deep
good.
and
It's-
intense.
It's hard because it's just a little bit lighter. And it's very easy to drink. It's not off-putting at all.
We are proof hounds here on the show. We've
We
said
are.
that for a long
We
time.
are.
We like higher proof stuff. But if I've got to drink something at 90,
I would
this
drink
to me, this is as good as it gets. Caleb, you want to chime in, then we'll go to Brian?
What's difficult about this is like, you remember whenever you have a few too many and your wife has a few too many, and you'll get to dance to like Juvenile.
No.
No,
No.
your knees aren't that
No.
good.
That happens all the time.
Yeah. So my wife and I sometimes will dance to some good old Juvenile, right? And you know the 1792 is that's dancing with your wife to Juvenile. Like you're like, yeah.
Caleb just opened his mouth and Opelousas fell out.
Yeah. And this other one, this is like a nice slow dance. This is like, ooh, this is great. This is relaxing. This is seductive. And it's hard to follow up to raunchy. But it does a good job. It really does. It's viscous. It's got heavy caramel. I can hint of chocolate. The flavors are gentle. They're supple. It's a smooth, easy drinker. And from someone who poured themselves quite a bit, the further down your glass you go, the better it gets.
Here's the worst part. I cannot disagree with almost anything
Boom.
he said about this particular whiskey because, yes, the 1792 is a kick you in your teeth, right? I mean, it's a kick you in the face whiskey, and if you like that, it's really hard to follow up.
Ba-dum-bum-bum.
But this Bluestone Manor, you used a word here that works. It is seductive. It is velvety. It is smooth. It is so flavorful. It is chocolatey. It's almost like an old-fashioned without all the sweet in a glass. You get a lot of those flavors on this.
I almost want to try it warm, if that makes sense, right? Like a good hot chocolate. I think this would be better. Like we're at room temperature, right? We're not drinking on ice or anything else. I'd be curious to see if this does a hot toddy by itself.
Okay.
It
All
might.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it might. All right, Brian, what about you? What do you think about this particular whiskey, this Bluestone Manor?
I agree with everything that's been said. It's quite the contrast to the 1792. Burley had used the term or used oily to describe the 1792, and drinking this one right afterwards, it goes down much easier. It's just more. I don't mean to use the word watery as a negative way to describe it, but it is full of flavor. It's just a lot thinner than that 1792.
It's not as oily.
That's right.
It is simply, and maybe this is a better way to put it, it's a cleaner whiskey as far as how it goes down, as far as how it sits on the palate. The flavors to me in this are much more distinct.
Mm-hmm.
You get more distinct flavors on this Bluestone Manor than the 1792 Full Proof, because the 1792 Full Proof is using the alcohol to get there. This is full-bodied. It is supple. It is velvety. And yeah, Caleb used that word. I'm going to go back there again. It is seductive almost on how it sits on the palate. Burley, you were
Yeah,
itching to chime in that you almost broke the microphone again.
Well, if we'd have some good attachments here, I guess. in the glass, it actually looks good in the glass. It's got great legs on the glass, actually. So it does have some of that oil to it, that viscosity that we do like, but it's hard to get it on the tongue because we just got shocked a few minutes ago with that 125. So, but it's very, very easy drink. This is an easy drinker. Lots of flavor, not punching you in the face like the other one, which is tons of flavor, but this is very subtle.
And this one not easy to find either.
I bet you this would be really good after one of Chef Willie's delicious steaks
Ooh.
and those potatoes.
Which potatoes? Because we've had like
No,
four
the
types of potatoes
scallop,
from
he
Willie.
He does the scallop potatoes.
So he's got
There's a-
he does the au gratin,
there-
and then he does the other one. And I can't remember the actual term for it for some reason, but I know the ones you're talking
it's
about.
fancy. Those, like after the meal, instead of a dessert, get this. Sip on this, enjoy this. You're already in the meat sweats. This will relax you, slow you down a little bit, and like this will be a great way to finish the night. That's what I see with this one.
And to that point, it's a great way to continue if you want to continue to savor and continue to sip.
Yeah.
You're not continuing to compound 125 over 125 over 125. You're going 125, and after that first sip, now all of a sudden you're sitting comfortable with 90.
Well, and what happens is, look, not everyone can drink 125 all night long. Not everyone can sit at 110, 115, 125 and do that glass after glass.
Some people can't drink 125 for 2 glasses.
Yeah,
Let's
so
just be honest.
You have to be able to, get up to fifth gear and downshift back to third sometimes and coast just for a little while and take it easy. And this is a great one to just take it back into third gear, get the RPMs right, and low and slow.
Walker, did we give you any of this?
No, he's still nursing the other glass because
And couldn't turn his microphone up again to
Yeah.
answer into the microphone.
yeah.
If you were in it for the long haul, this would be a good
Oh yeah.
long time drink over the night for sure.
So, Mr. Lester's, during the month of January 2025, you've got the Bluestone Manor, and then you've got the Forbidden Series out of Bardstown. $15 a pour, $40 for the flight of 3.
Oh gosh,
Which, especially when you pair these 3 together, because you've got the bourbon
yeah.
from the Forbidden Series, you've got the small batch bourbon, let
Yeah,
me
the
rephrase
single
that, then you've got the
barrel, small
single
batch.
barrel, and then you've got the Bluestone Manor. All of these,
You know what? You should do yourself justice and get 2 flights.
of what's the other flight? Or
No,
just
no,
2 flights of this?
Two flights of this.
Oh, okay.
Then we can try it. You can do Forbidden, Bluestone, Forbidden, and then mix it up a little bit and do like Forbidden, Bluestone. Try it a little bit. Do something different with it.
Well, now you're talking me into a third flight to see just
yeah.
how many, because what? So you've got 27 different combinations of how you can
There you go,
rotate
doing
through
wonderful
this.
math. Yes,
Yeah,
yes, there are.
yeah,
Yes,
and
there are.
that to me is what you should do. Now the only problem is after 3 flights, oh, you better hope you had a full meal,
Yeah.
which at Mr. Lester's is not difficult.
Oh God, no, it's easy.
Not difficult at all. Okay, so Burley, I know we're going to let you and Brian at the bar test out the Forbidden Series. Caleb and I had an opportunity last week. Who knows? Caleb and I may go back to that this
Why not?
week, right? We've got all kinds of stuff out there. One of the stories that we really kind of need to discuss, when we just say just don't. We started talking about the legacy media and why you don't hate the media enough in hour 1. If you missed it, find us wherever you get podcasts. Find us on social media. We're all over. Subscribe, like, follow, please. It helps the show. It helps you get more of your implicit bias. A story recently came out that the media is now full on admitting that the Biden White House wasn't really the Biden White House. Now, this is not news to...
It shouldn't be news to anyone.
It shouldn't be news to anyone. Fair, ring the bell because that's true. The signs have been there, 5 years? The full year of non-campaigning and then 4 years of alleged presidency? But some people still thought he's sharp as a tack because we believe the great lie.
Sharp as a brick.
Yeah. Sharp as a lead balloon or a turd in a punch bowl. They all go over about the same.
This version of Biden is the best version. Who said that? Who said that on national television?
Was that Scarborough?
It was.
Yeah.
That's right.
This is the best version. Well, now they're basically admitting that he never ran anything. Which, gentlemen, leads me to a couple of questions. Number one, if he wasn't running anything before January of 25 or before December of 24, who's actually coming up with all these pardons? And are they legal? Remember, if you go look at the number of pardons that were handed out by the alleged president,
he's handed out more pardons in the past, what, 3 presidents before him combined?
Yes, easily.
And it's ridiculous. So, I mean,
the last great spike in pardons was the Obama administration.
He pardoned.
and he surpassed that.
He commuted the sentence of 37 out of 40 federal death row inmates.
Correct. So again, thoughts on who's actually coming up with these pardons? And these laws, because it just hit about a week before this show aired, that they're trying to create a law that will forbid all offshore drilling on United States federal lands for any administration to come in the future. If he's not really the president, and please don't believe us on this, go look up all of these stories. But if he's not the president, let me rephrase this. He is the president.
Physically.
Well, but that also means legally.
Yeah.
Which means that someone illegally is directing him
strings.
and pulling the strings.
He's the Pino.
Well, it's at what
President
point?
in name only.
Yeah.
Well, it's at what point do we dig deeper, right? And do we say, okay, let's look into this? Because we can spend the next presidency looking into this and still probably not get the answer that is right? So it's one of those things. Like, if you don't think our nation is bought and paid for, you haven't been watching the news for the past 75 years,
Agreed.
right?
Well, maybe not
No,
75.
75, but
Well, because what? 25 minus 63, call it 65 for round numbers.
Walter Cronkite. It died with Walter Cronkite.
Oh, I think it died before Walter Cronkite.
Yeah, I mean,
I think it died. Well, I mean, Kennedy was assassinated in 63.
Yep.
Cronkite was
Yep.
the one who went on the air and announced it. So Cronkite was on the air well after Kennedy was assassinated, and that's my best guess as to when the real United States government died.
The trust in media died when Cronkite retired.
Well, that's trust in media. I'm
Yeah.
talking
Yeah.
about when the government being bought and paid for wasn't a thing. Now, it may even go back much farther than that, Caleb.
I mean, they were trying to buy the government before we even signed the paperwork, right?
Correct.
So
We have the Fed after all.
yeah, the devil's been knocking at the door since day -25 probably. But it's at what point do we open the door and say, you know what, I'm tired of the noise?
It happened at some point. It absolutely happened at some point. And the bigger question I have now is, so not just what's up with the pardons. The bigger question I have now is, if they are admitting that the Biden presidency
How
was
bad
never
is it?
really the Biden presidency, not just how bad is it? My question is this: is anything that he has signed, if they are
Valid.
admitting that he was never mentally coherent enough,
Is it legitimate?
is anything he signed legitimate? Or are in fact we dealing with fraud? And there's a saying, fraud vitiates everything, which means that if there was something fraudulent that happened there, or if he was fraudulently
Yeah, but you can't rewind
somehow
the clock.
installed, well, you can't rewind the clock, but you can rewind the paperwork and pull all of that out immediately.
But imagine the damages the government would have to pay for all the stuff that was done. Like that. I don't see him going back to day one. I don't see him going back to day like 1200. But I mean, no matter what you do, the truth needs to be spoken, right?
Agreed.
So whoever it is, be it a corporate entity, be it a shadow government, be it the devil himself pulling the strings, like myself, and I'm sure some people would love to know.
Oh, I would absolutely love to know.
I've got no faith that anyone will be held accountable for what we've seen happen over the last 4 years. It frustrates me to no end, because if the shoe was on the other foot, if we had Trump this last 4 years, and it was Trump who was suffering from cognitive decline.
Well, they tried that, remember?
They did try that. We heard that for the first 4 years. That,
Yeah.
what is it, the 25th Amendment? 25th
Yeah,
Amendment?
they tried 25th
25th
Amendment.
Yeah, over and over and over again. Okay, imagine that it was Trump, that this did go down. How do you think the Democratic Party, the mainstream media, would be treating that today? And how do you think that what do you think we would see over the next couple of years while they drug this out for as long as they possibly could? If the shoe was on the other foot, I think there would be people held accountable. I'm just not here today confident enough to say that we're going to see any accountability from the Biden administration. And the people I'm most upset about are the ones who day in and day out for years held water for this administration and vilified anybody and everybody who tried to say something about it. Robert Hur went in front of Congress and said that I couldn't. He is so far. I don't particularly remember his wording, but it was, we can't prosecute this guy. He's not there. And that guy was vilified beyond belief, left and right. Now, no one's more happy about what they're talking about now than the truth coming out than Robert Hur.
Well, and it's because he's been right for so long.
Yeah.
And if you want to hear more of people who've been right for so long, stick around for more segments of Implicit Bias as we bring you more of Hour 2 from the TSPL right after this. Whistleblowers all around on this week's episode of Implicit Bias. I'm your host, Kevon Bordelon. And when I say whistleblowers, I mean that in the truest sense of the term, with the government. Whistleblowers coming out and telling us about all the stuff the government doesn't want you to know about. Please don't believe us, but we're going to tell you about some of it coming up in this segment of the show. Reminder of who's here in the Mr. Lester's TSPL. Brian Hold Harmless Harmon at the bar with Burley Short Pour Pellerin, who has not been short pouring. Don't let him lie. He likes to tell you, oh, I got short poured. Yeah, his idea of a short pour is 4 fingers deep in the glass.
You know, you say something one time. What was that? Years ago.
No, you said it way more than once. You kept complaining. You'd like finish your glass with like, you short poured me.
Well,
I poured you 4 ounces.
You did short pour me
I
initially.
poured you
I'm like,
4 ounces. That's not a short pour.
I'm a big guy.
I've been watching. I always assumed he just drank a little bit of whiskey. That's why his name was Short Pour, but that hasn't been the case tonight.
No, that's
No.
That's why he gets the nickname, because he whines about never being poured enough whiskey. You short poured me. I'm telling you, it's like that every time.
It's fun to drink with him, though, because eventually it catches up.
Yeah,
it
eventually. That is the voice of the rustic renegade, Caleb Morse. Walker Griffon, the Implicit Bias Pledge, in the corner. We're going to get him his own camera sooner or later. That's going to be fun. When we get him a camera, and we're going to make it
Like
really...
a Polaroid?
No, we're going to make it a really unflattering angle on him.
He's going to have to start wearing pants.
Yeah, no, we're not getting him that kind of camera. But
Yeah.
we are going to get one for him that's going to be... Yeah, I got some ideas. Because we were going to put a camera maybe in the corner, like between the bar and Caleb's
What if
chair.
we just AI Walker all the time?
Oh, that could be fun.
Like, we could just be like, you know what? Today, Walker is... Give it to AI.
Yeah, we could we might do that. We might do that and see if we can dub that in.
Like a merman with a chicken's head and...
Yeah, all I know is this. Llamas don't have wings. So that's an old reference from a show.
That was good.
If you didn't get the joke, you might want to go back and try and find
May
it.
rest in peace.
Yes, Sam Stokes, rest in peace. Our former producer actually once asked if a llama was a bird. Just saying. Anyway, to the stories of the week and to the whistleblowers that are now out there. There are very few really good journalists out there, in my opinion, today. But one of those is Catherine Herridge. Catherine Herridge has done fantastic work. And in the last couple of weeks, she came out with a story of a CIA whistleblower. And we covered the initial part of this story when it happened in Cuba. When people in the U.S. Embassy were saying, man, we think there's some sort of sonic weapon that's being used on us, people losing their hearing, people having issues. And this CIA whistleblower says, oh no, it's not sonic. It is a directed energy weapon, which you might know as a DEW, a DEW, directed energy weapon, which I find absolutely fascinating from multiple standpoints. So first of all, Caleb's
Yeah,
looking
I'm
like he's
sorry.
not going to believe it.
No, I'm sorry. I believe him. But when you
It's
hear
a
her
her.
talk about it, well, I believe in them. Sorry.
Oh, okay.
When you hear her talk about it, it sounds more like what's called an LRAD, which is a long-range acoustic device.
I thought the same thing.
Yeah, and the LRAD is a really cool piece of equipment. We used it not like you're supposed to. We played Metallica and other stuff. People vomit. It's awesome. But it's a giant speaker that you can play different tones in a certain direction, and you have a limited cone of affected area where people feel it in their feet, get nauseous, get a migraine, and want to remove themselves from the area. A direct energy weapon, normally, depending on what you're using, it'll be microwave, and then it feels like they're cooking from the inside out because the moisture under the epidermis is boiling. Very, very painful. So
First of all, this is where working in something like television comes in handy. Because if you've ever seen old school live shots in TV, so I'm going to go back to the 90s, early 2000s. If you did a live shot, you got sent out with essentially a 15-passenger van that had been converted into a live truck. Large generator.
Oh, yeah. Puts off a
And-
lot of microwaves
and a very
radio
large
waves.
microwave
Mm-hmm.
equipment in it that would microwave the signal back to the station. The station would descramble the microwave, and that's how you got live television from probably the 1950s, 1960s, all the way through almost 2010, before digital really became a thing and they could transmit a signal, bounce it off a satellite really, really, really inexpensive. But it was known that you didn't point that microwave at a human being because that directed microwave would cook a person from the inside.
It messes them up. Now, it doesn't happen fast. It takes time, but we have microwave dishes that we use for weaponization.
Well, it's straight logic. If we know that a television station live truck can hurt someone if they get it long enough, what generation of technology is it that's being used there versus what the military has?
The ones that were being tested were tested in like 2003, 2004 on top of Humvees. And you had not necessarily a limited range, we'll call it a limited range, of about 150, 200 yards. But the LRAD was a much broader range. And that's a sound.
Can we say what the range was or range is?
A longer range, but can be very
Yeah, you could
directed.
focus.
Yeah,
you could focus it really well.
You could focus it this way, but it would travel much
Now you saw
further.
some of these during the elections and everything else, didn't you?
I saw
Yeah.
a lot of that stuff. That's something that interested me.
I messed with them. You're not like when we were issued them. We weren't supposed to do certain things, and we did that because we're stupid. And I wanted to learn how it worked. And when you're on the wrong end of it, it sucks.
Was that you? That was for crowd control, Caleb? What were y'all using?
Originally, it was for crowd control. That was the purpose, to help disperse groups who were doing nonviolent protests.
So, Caleb, I'm going to ask a question. If you pointed one of those, say, at a porta potty in the desert with somebody inside of it, would you by chance know what the effects might be? Might that be a bad thing?
100% know what happens.
I
And,
ask because I can only imagine the practical jokes that you tried
Oh,
to
it was great.
use those for.
It was great. But you feel it, and it's a sound that you never forget because it comes with like pre-programmed tones that do certain things. And then you could modify those tones and use different inputs to do different things. But the pre-programmed tones, you understood them and you knew what they meant because there were some of them that made you vomit upon, I'm not going to say impact, but
Yeah, upon the sound wave impacting
Yeah.
the body. That's what
and
it would be.
it was almost instantaneous. And from
They-
someone
they
who doesn't throw up
actually-
easy,
They actually used them in Waco, did they not?
they did.
They did. Yeah.
It makes sense. So it was Tesla who said life is frequency and vibration,
Yep.
right? And for those who've ever studied jujitsu, there are nerves on the body that if you tap that nerve in the wrong place at the right amount of force, will do exactly that. You will end up in a ball vomiting uncontrollably because that's what that nerve does. If you can figure out how to vibrate that nerve from afar, which essentially sounds like what an LRAD does, you now have a really good, and what is the de-escalation lethal force? What's the term that's used there?
This would be de-escalation, or even in your rules of force or your rules of engagement, in your escalation of force, because this would be one of your primary ones before lethal force. So,
it's non-lethal.
Yeah, but that's my point. You would now have a really good non-lethal tool to get people to do whatever it is you want them to do.
Oh yeah, and look, we've had a group of 30 or 40 people in front of us, and they were not complicit. You hit that, they comply. They comply.
You mean
Okay.
they were not compliant? I'm
Yeah,
sorry, not to say not complicit is
they
a
were-
different word.
yeah,
not
they were
to
non-compliant.
wordsmith you,
Yeah,
but
no, you're right. They were not
they were
compliant.
What's a wordsmith?
non-compliant.
No matter what we said,
Yeah.
they were non-compliant. They didn't want to follow instructions, and we're like, "Look, sorry, this is the next step." And all of a sudden,
and
they were
it
like,
doesn't
"Thank
even.
you."
The thing is, it doesn't even have to have verbal commands with it.
It doesn't. No, it's
it
self-
takes control of a seemingly uncontrollable situation with a desired effect.
Well, yeah, and these were individuals back then where we were like, "Look, if you do this again, things will happen."
Because they can't communicate.
Correct.
They can't then form. Oh well, let's do this instead.
No,
They
when
just
you-
want to get the hell away from.
Once
it.
Yeah.
it's done, it's like ants. They want out of the
They
affected
want
area.
out of the area.
and
Okay,
they want
so
to be done with it.
that now brings us to the extension of this conversation, which is we have established that we have essentially direct energy weapons that utilize sound.
Mhm.
We have an accusation by a whistleblower that we have a direct energy weapon, stick that finger, Walker, a direct energy weapon that does more than just what sound does,
Yep.
and it's being utilized terrestrially on the planet. Now the question becomes Hawaii. Now the question becomes blue roofs. Now the question becomes cars that, for some reason, wildfires allegedly just don't touch. Now the question becomes, is there really something out there that's being utilized that is way beyond what even this whistleblower is talking about? Because if one is possible, are the others possible? Or does it just take too much energy?
That goes, you throw in weather manipulation, creating high and
Well,
low.
HARP is a whole
Yeah.
nother discussion about
No,
what
you
people
can-
think about the HARP.
There's
apparatus.
something else you can throw in on a much lower level that, you put two and two together, you get 725 all of a sudden. So there's another level of this that just clicked, and it makes a lot more sense.
Are you going to tell us?
No.
Or
No,
we'll sort that out over the break.
no, he's not.
We'll come back. We'll see if we can tell you or if I can tell you or not. And then we will bring you some more stories, some more weekly whiskeys, and more fun on Implicit Bias. The net might be neutral now, but we're not on Implicit Bias. I'm your host, Kavan Bordelon. Welcome into Hour 2, which is always more fun. The penultimate segment of this week's episode. That means it is the second to last segment for this episode of Implicit Bias. Great crew here in the Mr. Lester's TSPL this week. At the bar, we've got Burley, Short Pour Pellerin, Brian, Hold Harmless Harmon, and then in the chairs, Caleb Morse, the rustic renegade himself, and me, Kavan Bordelon. Okay. So, what, Caleb?
I raised a glass to myself, and Walker was like, "This son of a gun."
Caleb toasting himself
He
again.
didn't mouth it, but I saw it in his face. He was like, "You know
He
what?"
didn't even toast us over here,
Yeah.
Brian.
Walker's like, one day I'm gonna be that guy.
Oh, yikes. Okay, so
Sorry.
that's all right. We'll get back on track here sooner or later. Anyway, recent appeals court puts net neutrality back in play. Big headline came out. You can find it, New York Post. A appeals court ruled basically that the government, and I'm trying to translate this into just regular, normal speak as possible, that the government has to treat all internet users the same. That's kind of the net, as opposed to the government getting in control and speeding up internet for some people, slowing it down for others, censoring certain internet for certain people. And look, some states, it's fine. It's happening. California has some rules that are in play. That's fine, because this was a federal ban on net neutrality that was instituted by the Biden administration. Now they say, nope, if you're on the internet, everybody has to be treated the same. This is what I find fascinating about it, though. This appeals court used a very recent Supreme Court ruling to say, oh no, the administration can't put this rule into play. Anybody want to take a guess at what recent ruling was utilized? How about the destruction of the Chevron deference?
Really?
So it's not a law. The administration was not utilizing a law to try and restrict and to basically censor internet access. They were using a government administration, right?
Yeah, white paper.
Correct. Well, it wasn't even, I don't even know that it was a white paper, right? It was just a divisional.
It was a practiced action. We'll call
Yeah,
it.
yeah, it was a practiced action. And they said, well, we get to determine this because our branch of the government says so.
This is how it's interpreted.
Correct. And the Third Circuit said, nope, you don't get to do that because the Chevron deference was struck down. You were using the Chevron deference to create the restrictions on the internet, and now it's wide open again. I love this. I've actually found a way to render the crew here in the TSPL speechless.
Well, this is one of the topics that you did not send us.
Correct. I did not send this one. I did not. But this
So-
is a big one.
So
The
you're
Chevron
hitting
deference,
us
though.
blind completely here, but
The Chevron deference you should know.
absolutely.
And what it means is the bigger picture and why it's important.
Right.
So what does this mean? What is the larger interpretation of this? The larger interpretation of this is being able to look at someone like the IRS and saying, okay, is this your interpretation of the law, Internal Revenue Service,
Well,
or is this actually in the law? Because if it's your interpretation, you can no longer use the Chevron deference
Okay.
to create that interpretation.
Well, and that's the application. That's what we've been trying to narrow it down to, is when we look at interpretation of the law is not the law,
Correct.
right? And individual, not even branches, but arms of the government, how they interpret the law must coincide with how the law is read and interpreted by the Supreme Court. Because there are many, many divisions that do not do that and do not follow certain guidelines. And the executive branch, I'm going to use them as an example, might direct them to operate outside of a certain understanding or interpretation of the law
Certain
at the time.
definition that might be written in
Right.
the law.
So now I love to see this go cross-platform, because the platform that I want to see it in is mine, right? Because when we go to the ATF, the ATF director has recently stepped down on the 18th, his last day, because he realizes he messed up, and that the interpretation of the law that they were given and they were allowed to use is not what the law says. And I'm very tired of all these different arms of the government branches interpreting the law at their own whim and their own way.
Burley, you were going to chime in there for a second?
I'm going to paraphrase this as best I can. In my prior life, as an assistant administrator of a hospital, right? One of the accrediting bodies
Yep.
is Joint Commission.
Yep.
Okay.
Joint Commission audits are gospel in
They-
healthcare.
Okay. And it is. And you want to be a JCAHO
You wanna be accredited, correct.
facility. The big hullabaloo about the whole thing